Footsteps echo on wet cobblestones in the dark heart of old Edinburgh. We all know the chilling tale of the city's most notorious serial killers, William Burke and William Hare. But what if the story we have been told for centuries is a carefully constructed lie? By the end of this, you will understand the shocking secret that powerful figures in Edinburgh worked desperately to keep buried. We will explore why a respected doctor was never charged, and what really happened to the evidence that could have exposed a wider conspiracy. What does it take for a society to look the other way in the name of progress? The year was 1828, and the city was gripped by a peculiar kind of fear. It was not the fear of a specter in the dark, but of a friendly face at the door. Two Irish immigrants, William Burke and William Hare, found a terrible shortcut to profit. They ran a lodging house in the Westport district, and when an elderly tenant died of natural causes, they made a discovery. They sold his body to the famous anatomist Dr. Robert Knox for £7.10, a small fortune for men of their station. That first payment opened a door to a darkness they were all too willing to enter. When another tenant fell ill, they did not wait for nature to take its course. They developed a method, a silent and efficient way to leave no marks of violence. They would get their victim drunk, then one would pin them down while the other covered their mouth and nose, suffocating them. This technique would later bear the name of one of its creators, becoming known as burking. The bodies, 16 in total, were delivered under cover of night to the back door of Dr. Knox's anatomy school. The arrangement was simple and, for a time, horrifically effective. The city's poor and marginalized began to vanish, their disappearances barely causing a ripple in the wider world. But no secret of this magnitude can stay buried forever. Suspicion finally fell upon Burke and Hare after two lodgers discovered the body of their final victim, a woman named Mary Docherty, hidden under a bed. Public outrage exploded when the story broke. The city was consumed by a frenzy, its citizens realizing that the very streets they walked had been a hunting ground. Yet when the pair finally stood trial, the proceedings took a bizarre turn. Hare was offered a deal, a complete immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony against his partner. He took it, and his evidence sealed Burke's fate. William Burke was found guilty, hanged before a massive crowd, and then, in a final twist of cruel irony, his body was publicly dissected in the medical school of Edinburgh University. His skeleton remains on display to this day, a permanent exhibit of his crimes. This is the story we have been told for 2 centuries, a tidy narrative of 2 evil men and the justice that caught them. But when you look closer, the pieces do not fit together so neatly. Why was only one man brought to justice? Why did the man who bought the corpses, Dr. Knox, face no legal consequences? The official story feels contained, almost too convenient, as if it was designed to point the finger at 2 individuals and quietly close the book on a much deeper, more disturbing truth. Burke's execution provided a neat and satisfying end for a horrified public, but it also effectively silenced the one man who knew the full scope of the operation. The official record was closed, yet a persistent whisper has echoed through the centuries, a rumor that Burke and Hare were not the sole architects of this terror. They were the ones caught, but were they truly alone? Look at the curious case of Dr. Robert Knox. Public fury demanded his head, his anatomy school was attacked by mobs, and pamphlets circulated branding him a monster. Yet when the legal machinery turned, it passed over him completely. He was never charged, never stood trial. His suppliers, he always claimed, were anonymous, a convenient shadow that protected him from any deeper inquiry. But how could a man of his intellect and position not ask questions when body after body, still warm from life, arrived at his back door? The silence from the city's elite was deafening. This was a time of immense progress in medical science, and Edinburgh was its beating heart. Anatomists like Knox were pushing the boundaries of knowledge, but they needed bodies, a constant and gruesome fuel for their research. The The legal supply was a trickle, restricted to executed murderers. The demand, however, was a torrent, so a system emerged in the shadows, a black market for the dead. Was there an unspoken agreement, a conspiracy of silence, among the city's medical and legal establishment? Did powerful men look the other way because the grisly work of men like Burke and Hare, and perhaps other resurrectionists they worked with, was simply too useful to stop? The sheer number of bodies suggests an operation more sophisticated than two lodgers working alone. Could there have been a wider network of grave robbers and informants, a criminal ring that Burke and Hare were merely a part of, a part that was sacrificially offered up to protect the whole system? By pinning everything on Burke and letting Hare walk free, the authorities contained the scandal. They gave the public a villain to hate and a body to dissect, all while ensuring the secret river of cadavers, so vital to their scientific ambitions, could continue to flow from other, unnamed sources. The real secret buried in the shadows of old Edinburgh may not be who killed, but who knew. So much of the evidence simply does not add up. Take the official count of 16 victims. That number comes solely from the testimony of William Hare, a man given every reason to minimize the scale of the horror to secure his own freedom. Is it truly believable that two men, operating entirely alone, could murder so many people without a single piece of direct physical evidence ever being found on them or in their lodgings? The method of burking left no outward marks, true, but what about the personal effects of the victims, or the countless small traces such a violent enterprise would inevitably leave behind? The investigation seemed to focus only on what was necessary to convict Burke, ignoring any path that might have led to a wider network. Then there are the witnesses who were never called. Several residents of the Westport came forward with stories of seeing Burke and Hare with other individuals, shadowy figures who helped carry suspiciously heavy sacks late at night. Their testimony was deemed irrelevant to the case against Burke and was quietly set aside. Most telling of all is the complete disappearance of Dr. Knox's account books. These ledgers, which would have detailed every payment made for anatomical specimens, vanished immediately after the arrests. Were they destroyed to protect the doctor or to hide the names of other suppliers whose existence would have blown the case wide open? The selective prosecution is the most glaring anomaly of all. Hare, a full and willing participant in every murder, was granted immunity to testify. He was then secretly escorted out of the city and vanished, his silence presumably purchased along with his freedom. This legal maneuver guaranteed that only one side of the story would be heard in court, a story that carefully omitted any mention of a larger operation. All of this points to a city trapped in a profound contradiction. Edinburgh in the 1820s was the proud cradle of the Scottish Enlightenment, a beacon of reason and scientific progress. Its medical school was the finest in the world, attracting students from across the globe. Yet this glittering reputation was built on a foundation of grave robbing and a clandestine trade in human flesh. The demand for fresh bodies was insatiable. Exposing the full or ugly truth of the Westport murders would have meant admitting that the city's greatest institution was morally bankrupt, that its celebrated advances were funded by murder. The scandal would have destroyed Edinburgh's standing forever, so the question becomes not just who killed, but who had the most to lose if the entire sordid system was brought into the light. The motive for a cover-up was not just to protect one man, but to save an entire world-renowned establishment from collapse. The whispers from the Westport murders did not exist in a vacuum. They were simply the loudest echoes in a city that seemed to breed dark secrets. In the very same decades that Burke and Hare operated, Edinburgh was haunted by another spectral predator known only as the monster of the old town. This shadowy figure was never caught or identified, but his legend persisted in the newspapers and public houses. His method was a particular kind of cruelty, targeting women by slashing their clothing with a razor-sharp blade as they walked through the city's dimly lit alleyways, leaving them terrified but physically unharmed. The attacks were sudden, silent, and the perpetrator always melted back into the labyrinth of closes. Could this have been a third, uncaught accomplice of Burke and Hare, someone who reveled in the thrill of the hunt but operated with a different, less final objective? Or was he merely a symptom of the same environment that allowed serial killers to flourish, a city where anonymity was guaranteed by its very design? Edinburgh's geography was a criminal's greatest ally. The old town was a vertical warren of narrow, winding closes and steep staircases, plunging into deep shadows even at noon. Beneath the main streets lay a hidden city, the infamous South Bridge vaults, sealed off and forgotten, a dank underworld perfect for concealing any manner of sin. In such a place, a person could vanish between one step and the next, and a crime could be concealed simply by turning a corner. This landscape did not just hide individual acts of violence, it enabled an entire system of silence to operate. When you understand the physical fabric of the city, the idea that Burke and Hare worked entirely alone begins to feel even less plausible. Their story was the one that broke the surface, but the deeper currents of unexplained death and disappearance suggest a much wider pattern. The full story of Edinburgh's serial killers was never truly brought to light because the city itself, with its dark hearts and buried layers, was the perfect place to ensure it never would be. The evidence for a hidden narrative is overwhelming, a puzzle where the missing pieces tell the most important story. Dr. Robert Knox, the man who received the warm corpses, faced no legal consequences. The trial was meticulously engineered to convict only William Burke, silencing the full truth, and the city's powerful medical and legal establishment had every reason to ensure the anatomy schools, the pride of Edinburgh, could continue their vital, grisly work. This was not a simple failure of justice, it was a calculated containment of a scandal. The real secret of Edinburgh's serial killers is not merely the crimes of two men, but the chilling willingness of an entire society to look the other way. When progress becomes the ultimate goal, what dark compromises are we prepared to make? The story of Burke and Hare forces us to ask what truths we might be ignoring today in the name of advancement. What other historical cover-ups do you think are waiting to be uncovered? Share your theories in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the world's darkest mysteries.